The story of Kayako is one that surprisingly many of us already know. That is, if you have seen the movie The Grudge. The urban legend tells of a woman named Kayako and the story of her tragic life. Even at such a young age, Kayako was neglected by her parents and peers alike, left feeling alone, unwanted, and depressed most days. As years went by, nothing seemed to change in the poor woman's life. That was until she met a man named Taeko Sayaki. The two soon got married, had a child together, feeling truly in love. And for the first time in her life, Kayako felt happy. The person she loved most in the world was her son, Toshio. Things would soon take a turn for the worst for Kayako. One day, her husband was looking around their room and found Kayako's journal. After reading it, he became enraged, convinced she was cheating on him. Taeko waited with a knife at hand for his wife to return home from work. As soon as Kayako walked through the door, her husband began attacking her, slashing her open, beating her, all in front of their young son. She tried to run. She was in so much pain, even slipping in her own blood. Just as she was in arm's reach of the door, her husband grabbed her and snapped her neck. Though this did not kill Kayako, instead paralyzing the poor woman. The only sound that could be heard from her was a rattle-like noise, which many of you who have seen The Grudge will remember. He took her body to the attic and put a plastic bag over her head until she died, then making his way to their son. In his rage, he grabbed the young boy, dragging him into the bathroom, where he then drowned him in a bathtub. Now the story goes on to say that since Kayako died in such a terrible way, her spirit still haunts the house. In fact, it's said that soon after her own murder, she appeared to her husband and strangled him with her hair. The legend says that if you go to the gruesome house, you will be greeted by Kayako, who will chase you as she crawls on all fours, covered in blood, her head twisting in a non-human way, while making a blood-curdling sound that is similar to the one they used in the movie The Grudge. Warning: this urban legend entitled Kashima Reiko states that after you listen to her story, the ghost of Kashima will appear to you. So, take that as your first and final warning before listening any further. There was once a woman who lived in Hokkaido, Japan, and her name was Kashima Reiko. She was alone one night near some railroad tracks when a group of men approached her. They quickly began horribly assaulting her, beating her, and ultimately leaving her on the ground for dead. After slipping in and out of consciousness, she began to cry for help, but nobody was around to hear her. She tried crawling in hopes of finding anyone to help her, but she soon crawled onto the railroad tracks and passed out. An hour or so later, a train came along and completely ran her over, severing her body in half. The legend states that Kashima Reiko's ghost is still wandering the earth in search of her legs. Now, if you have heard this tale, as stated earlier, Kashima is said to appear to you within a month, though some claim it only takes days. She is said to primarily appear in bathrooms, specifically school bathrooms. If you encounter her, you must do the following, or else she will take your legs. She might ask, "Where are my legs?" You must answer, "On the Meishin Expressway." She'll then proceed to ask, "Who told you that?" You will then reply, "Kashima Reiko told me that." Now, the ghost is known to trick people, so if she asks, "What is my name?" you must not reply with Kashima. Instead, you must say, "Mask Death Demon." Remember, It's very important that you get that last part right, because she won't just take your legs, she'll also take your life. So, now that you've heard all this, from this moment on, you now have 1 month to prepare to meet Kashima Reiko. Good luck. Like the first entry on this list, this urban legend has been adapted into a popular horror film called The Ring. Though the real urban legend the movie is based off of is called Sadako. The story is about a young girl named Sadako, set in the early 1900s, though she was anything but an average girl. In fact, Sadako had some psychic abilities. As a child, Sadako was an outcast. While the other children played together, she was left alone to sit and fester in her own depression. Her mother was a psychic like her, and was a part of many psychic experiments. That was, until she was banned from any further experiments after being labelled a fraud who faked her abilities. The newfound title weighed too hard on her mother, ultimately leading to her suicide. Now Sadako was alone, not a friend in the world without the comfort of her own mother. As she grew older, so did her powers, causing her father to take her to a doctor in Tokyo. This would soon lead to some very disturbing events. The doctor forced Sadako to take part in experiments that forced her to use her mind to make words and images appear on film. Soon, the girl began making many of these tapes, and the doctor wanted to publish a book about his findings with Sadako. She refused after remembering what happened to her mother when she was called a fraud. She didn't want to follow in the same footsteps and begged the doctor to let her leave. That's where the official story ends. Nobody knows what exactly happened to her after that, but most believe the doctor killed her. Some say he strangled the poor girl, then dumped her body in a well by the hospital, making sure to seal it up after. Tragically, Sadako was not dead and woke up in a panic. She tried for days and days to escape, breaking her fingernails, trying to scale the walls in the process. Her hands were bloody to the bone after each attempt, and still, she was no closer to freedom. After some time, she finally died, but not before vowing to get revenge upon the world. As she was laying down, dying, she used the psychic ability to project her hatred upon a few unmarked videotapes around the world. If you so happen to come across one of these tapes and begin to play it, you will see a young, haggard-looking woman in a tattered white gown. After viewing the tape, you will die in 7 days unless you make a copy of it and pass it along to someone else, essentially creating a never-ending cycle of death. The story of Kuchisake Onna is one of the most sinister on this list of Japanese urban legends. Years and years ago, there was a woman who was so incredibly beautiful, but she was extremely vain and self-centered. Her husband was an abusive, jealous man who became convinced she was cheating on him. One day, after arriving home, her husband began to beat her, eventually grabbing a sword and slicing her mouth from ear to ear, saying, "Who will think you're beautiful now?" Sadly, she died from the blood loss. After that, she became an enraged spirit who walks the earth wearing a surgical mask to cover her face. If you so happen to be wandering the streets of Japan and the ghost of Kuchisake approaches you, you must do the following. She will ask in a hushed tone, "Am I beautiful?" No matter what, you will not be quick enough to respond, and she will tear off her surgical mask, screaming, "Am I beautiful now?" after revealing her terrifying face. If you happen to say no, she will kill you by decapitation, and if you say yes, she will slice you ear to ear, just like her. The only true way to escape her is by saying, "You look normal to me." It might confuse her, giving you some time to run away. Sightings of the horrid apparition go as far back as the 1970s. The earliest tales of Kuchisake are of her hunting down children in the streets of Japan. The rumors of this ghost spread so much, it caused the police in the local area to set out on patrol for any suspicious activity. Even teachers began walking children home from school to ensure their safety. After some time, the stories seemed to die out. That was until 2004, when stories of a woman wearing a surgical mask and chasing children began to surface. Then, in 2007, some shocking evidence came out after a doctor looked at an old, dead body of a woman who was killed by a car after chasing some children in the middle of the streets in the 1970s. What makes this so chilling is the fact that the woman's mouth was ripped from ear to ear. Now, if you so happen to ever come in contact with Kuchisake-ana, remember what to say and remember what to do. When the chance comes, run. Run as fast as you can, unless you want to end up like her. The story of Yuki-ana is one of Japan's most infamous urban legends. The first ever known story of the Snow Woman goes as the following. There lived two woodcutters, Masako and Minokichi. Masako was an old man, and Minokichi, his apprentice, was a lad of 18 years. Every day they went out together to a forest situated miles from their village. Masako and Minokichi were on the way home, one very cold evening, when a great snowstorm overtook them. They reached the ferry, and they found that the boatman had gone away, leaving his boat on the other side of the river. The woodcutters took shelter in the ferryman's hut. There was no place in which to make a fire. It was only a two-man hut, with a single door, but no window. Masako and Minokichi fastened the door and lay down to rest, with their straw raincoats over them. At first, they did not feel very cold, and they thought that the storm would be soon over. The old man almost immediately fell asleep, and soon so did the boy, but not for long. He was awakened by a showering of snow in his face. The door of the hut had been forced open, and, by the snowlight, he saw a woman in the room. A woman all in white. She was bending above Masako and blowing her breath upon him, and her breath was like a bright white smoke. Almost in the same moment, she turned to Minokichi and stooped over him. He tried to cry out, but found that he could not utter any sound. The white woman bent down over him, lower and lower, until her face almost touched him, and he saw that she was very beautiful, though her eyes made him very afraid. For a little time she continued to look at him. Then she smiled, and she whispered, "I intended to treat you like the other man, but I cannot help feeling some pity for you, because you are so young. You are a pretty boy, Minokichi, and I will not hurt you now. But if you ever tell anybody, even your own mother, about what you have seen this night, I shall know it, and then I will kill you. Remember what I say." With these words, she turned from him and passed through the doorway. Then he found himself able to move, and he sprang up and looked out. But the woman was nowhere to be seen, and the snow was driving furiously into the hut. Minakichi closed the door and secured it by fixing several billets of wood against it. He wondered if the wind had blown it open. He thought that he might have been only dreaming, and he might have mistaken the gleam of the snowlight in the doorway for the figure of a white woman, but he could not be sure. He called to Masako and was frightened because the old man did not answer. He put out his hand in the dark and touched Masako's face, and found that it was ice. Masako was stark and dead. By dawn, the storm was over, and when the ferryman returned to his station a little after sunrise, he found Minokichi lying senseless beside the frozen body of Masako. Minokichi was promptly cared for and soon came to himself, but he remained a long time ill from the effects of the cold of that terrible night. He had been greatly frightened also by the old man's death, but he said nothing about the vision of the woman in white. As soon as he got well, he returned to his calling, going alone every morning to the forest and coming back at nightfall with his bundles of wood, which his mother helped him to sell. One evening, in the winter of the following year, as he was on his way home, he overtook a girl who happened to be travelling by the same road. She was a tall, slim girl, very good looking, and she answered Minakichi's greeting in a voice as pleasant to the ear as the voice of a songbird. Then he walked beside her, and they began to talk. The girl said that her name was Oyuki, that she had lately lost both her parents, and she was going to Yedo, where she happened to have some poor relatives who might help her to find a situation as a servant. Minakichi soon felt charmed by this strange girl, and the more that he looked at her, the handsomer she appeared to be. He asked her whether she was yet betrothed, and she answered, laughingly, that she was free. Then, in her turn, she asked Minakichi whether he was married or pledged to marry, and he told her that, although he had only a widowed mother to support, the question of an honourable daughter-in-law had not yet been considered, as he was very young. After these confidences, they walked on for a long while without speaking. But as the proverb declares, when the wish is there, the eyes can say as much as the mouth. By the time they reached the village, they had become very much pleased with each other, and then Minakichi asked Oyuki to rest for a while at his house. After some shy hesitation, she went there with him, and his mother made her welcome, and prepared a warm meal for her. Oyuki behaved so nicely that Minakichi's mother took a sudden fancy to her, and persuaded her to delay her journey to Yedo. And the natural end of the matter was that Yuki never went to Yedo at all. She remained in the house as an honourable daughter-in-law. Oyuki provided a very good daughter-in-law. When Minakichi's mother came to die, some 5 years later, her last words were of affection and praise for the wife of her son. And Oyuki bore Minakichi 10 children, boys and girls, handsome children all of them, and very fair-skinned. The country folk thought Oyuki a wonderful person, by nature different from themselves. Most of the peasant women aged early, but Oyuki, even after becoming a mother of 10 children, looked as young and fresh as on the day when she had first came to the village. One night, after the children had gone to sleep, Oyuki was sewing by the light of a paper lamp, and Minakichi, watching her, said, "To see you sewing there, with the light on your face, makes me think of a strange thing that happened to me when I was a lad of 18. I then saw somebody as beautiful and white as you are now. Indeed, she was very like you." Without lifting her eyes from her work, Oyuki responded, "Tell me about her. Where did you see her?" Then Minakichi told her about the terrible night in the ferryman's hut, and about the white woman that had stopped above him, smiling and whispering, and about the silent death of old Masako, and he said, "Asleep or awake, that was the only time I saw a being as beautiful as you. Of course, she was not a human being, and I was afraid of her, very much afraid. But she was so white. Indeed, I have never been sure whether it was a dream I saw, or of the woman of the snow." Oyuki flung down her sewing and arose, and bowed above Minakichi where he sat, and shrieked into his face, "It was I! Yuki it was, and I told you then that I would kill you if you ever said one word about it. But for those children asleep there, I would kill you this moment. And now you had better take very, very good care of them, for if ever they have reason to complain of you, I will treat you as you deserve." Even as she screamed, her voice became thin, like a crying of wind. Then she melted into a bright white mist that spired to the roof beams, and shuddered away through the smoke hold. Never again was she seen.